in, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 162 of Let's Go Racing Time with John Staubach here with you as we look back at the weekend that was at Kansas Speedway. Ross Chastain gets into victory lane time in 2024, and now we head to Talladega in a playoff elimination race where everything is on the line. Nobody is locked in heading into the next round. Certainly going to mean chaos this weekend at Talladega. We'll talk about all that coming up in just a bit. We'll also go over our news and notes, the latest headlines in the sport. We'll get to our mailbag segment before the end of the show as well, as Dominic joins me right now. Dominic, I got to say, too, a little shout out to begin the show. My sister, for her graduation present, I got her tickets to the race, and she had time. And funny enough, she was supposed to go back in May. Didn't work out for whatever reason. And I told her at the time, I said, be glad you didn't go, even though it was the closest race in NASCAR history, because with the rain delay and all that, you wouldn't have wanted to wait out the storm. It would have been just a long day. And sure enough, Sunday, perfect day, clear skies, great racing. Ross Chastain gets it done. And I think I heard Denny Hamlin say this going into the week. He said something to the fact of that Kansas is our best track on the circuit right now, that they put on a show every single time, that they have the mile-and-a-half program figured out with this car, with the pavement there, and the race that was on display. And we saw some exciting action with Ross Chastain getting it done.
Win number 5, Ross Chastain keep that streak going of at least one career win per season in the last 3 years. And a driver that didn't get it done too, Tyler, it seemed like it was Kyle Busch's victory till it wasn't, because that battle he and Chastain had for the lead was awesome. Kyle Busch trying to lap Chase Briscoe with about 31 laps to go, spins it off at 2, doesn't hit anything, but the day was pretty much tarnished from there. And Chastain, the way he was able to pull off some of those restarts and just pull away, really showed the strength of that number 1 team. But hey, here we go, Tyler, this parody of 2022. I had it pointed out to me by my colleague and dear friend Jonathan Phil of the show that we are just 2 wins away now from tying the NASCAR record for the most winners in a single season. We've talked about this new car providing parity. We're seeing it even into the playoffs.
Yeah, we are. Names that were not getting into victory lane are now getting into victory lane. Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, and others here. And I think about, where we're at. We're already seeing silly season already making its changes with driver swaps now before even the season is ended heading into next year. And a lot of these teams, even if you're not in the playoffs, you have something to still race for. You're trying to build momentum for next year. And I think if you're Team Trackhouse with what Ross did, or if you're RFK Racing with what Chris Buescher did a couple weeks ago, you got to be feeling pretty good that you still got to win and you're building up momentum for next year.
Absolutely. These teams are going to be a lot hungrier going into next season. And yeah, I'm sure it sucks. You even look too like at Lane Riggs in the Truck Series, winning in front of the show, 2 wins and a second place finish to open that opening round in the Truck Series. It's like 2006, Tony Stewart came back in 2007. Hungrier made the playoffs after missing it in 06 and went on that little terror that he did of winning all those events. Not to say these guys can't do that. And we've seen this before, Tyler, where you have a guy miss the playoffs and they come back with a vengeance the following year. Chris Buescher, I think, is a good, maybe more recent example of that in the next gen era, where he missed the playoffs in 2022, won the race at Bristol in the 17 car, and then went on to win 3 races in 2023. So just because you missed this year doesn't mean it's all over. It just gives you that momentum, and I feel like it gives you more of that chip on your shoulder and more of a drive for the following season. We know it's a momentum-based sport.
Well, and you mentioned with Ross Chastain, of him keeping the streak alive of getting a win per season. Now, what is it now? 3-4 years that he's gotten a win now?
3 in a row, yes.
And, you go back, the most wins he's had in a single season, I believe, is 2 a couple of years ago. And with him still consistently showing speed, with him getting into victory lane, even missing the playoffs and everything, I don't feel like it's a matter of if, but when we see the breakthrough season where Ross Chastain, we're talking about at the end of the year, has 4 or 5 wins. Maybe he's the champion when it's all said and done. I think getting this done, you talk about the momentum for next year. this could really potentially set things up for Ross Chastain to have that year that we're waiting for him to do, of having those 4 or 5+ win type seasons. Next year could be it for him after getting this one here.
Could certainly be so. And you know, Team Trackhouse is better than what the results have posted. They did have one driver make the playoffs, of course, with Daniel Suarez and the Atlanta win, and Suarez making the round at 12. We know those cars are very, very strong. Ross Chastain has made the championship four as a championship contender and was running down Joey Logano, it seemed to appear, in 2022. Just ran out of time. So certainly that time is coming for Trackhouse Racing. And I got to say, too, Tyler, I know this is totally another tangent, but we know Justin Marks isn't afraid to think outside the box and what they do with their Project 91 and like what has happened the last couple of weeks with Team Red Bull and Daniel Ricciardo being released. You got to imagine there's probably going to be some strings pulled to see somebody like that run some races next year in Cup. And I feel like that only makes the organization better to kind of circle it all back and make it all worthwhile here. You have all of these outside guys come in. Who is that not going to pump up the team members, the fellow drivers, the teammates? You are teammates with F1 guys, teammates from different disciplines. That thinking outside the box strategy, I think, really plays to the Trackhouse brand in itself, because it's not a team. It's not only a team, Tyler. It's a brand. They're doing it their way. They're forging their path, and they're making their voices heard.
Certainly so. All right, Dom, let's break down the playoff picture. I got this in tiers. Let's start with tier one.
Yeah.
Tier one I have is Byron, Blaney, and Bell. Byron, 34 points to the good. Blaney and Bell, both 28 points to the good. Basically, with those three, Dominic, I think you're looking at, as long as they don't crash out early, keyword early, they could still crash out potentially. As long as they don't crash out early at Talladega, I think those three are in pretty good shape, especially if they get some stage points early on to advance to the next round when it comes to those three.
Stage points will be their best friends on Sunday. With Talladega being the middle race, no driver in the playoffs winning last week. No one's safe. Like you said, William Byron's the point leader. And I think it's worth noting, too, him being in that tier one. This is the first time, I don't know if you realize this or not, Tyler, but the first time since the Daytona 500 that William Byron is leading the points. I mean, who would have thought that? He's had a 3-win season. It's been quiet throughout the summer, like we're used to seeing with the Hendrick camp. But the fact that he has not led points since he won the season opener, I think was a shocker to find out this week. But you're right. William
And he's
Byron,
capable of winning any given week, too.
he is. And I would say Christopher Bell's in that same conversation. It seems like Team Penske has stepped it up when it counts as well. So those three guys are sitting in a really, really good position for this Sunday. If they can collect stage points, avoid a catastrophic points blow, they're sitting really good heading into the Roval.
So tier two, this is what I qualify as tier two. Kyle Larson, 18 above. Hamlin, 11 above. Bowman, 8 above, 4 through 6. I think with those guys, like obviously you'd love to win. That's the number one goal, and win and you're in. But I think with those three, if they finish top 10, then they can feel pretty comfortable.
Even with no stage points.
Even with no stage points, I think if you finish top 10 and you're in those three, there's enough shuffling around, I think you would feel fine.
So let me ask you this. We saw Hamlin's disastrous Atlanta attempt to stay in the back, and he still wrecked at the end. You're Denny Hamlin. You're Chris Gabehart. What are you taking to the drawing board? We've seen him run up front, but we've seen him try the strategy in the back. What do you base it off what you did in Atlanta, or what direction are you going if you're Denny Hamlin?
If I'm Denny or anybody, and it's just me personally, and I know people are going to disagree with this, I'd be going for the win. I would be trying to run up front, get stage points as much as you can, and go from there. I mean, obviously, yes, you can get wrecked from behind. That does happen. But I feel like the safest place you can be is in the lead. If Hamlin's got the speed to run up front, then I feel like he needs to run up front.
And we know Kyle Larson's never won a super speedway race, a track.
Which is bizarre, by the way.
It is. It is. You look at the stats on that. Kyle Larson's run up front. It's like Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace is a past champion, but could never get it done on super speedways. He acknowledged that. And Larson, one thing he has said too is they've run well, but the finishes just don't show. And then you look at a guy like Alex Bowman, Tyler, and really seems like that 4-8 team has just come alive this playoff for the Team Penske cars and Alex Bowman are in like their own type of tier. If we're talking about teams that have just turned on a light switch through this playoff run this far, very impressive.
So then the next ones. Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, and Tyler Reddick. Elliott and Logano are 4 above. Reddick is 4 back. I don't think you play a conservative approach at all. I think you go to win the race. You try to run up front, collect as many stage points as you can. Because even if you do get wrecked, whatever, maybe the stage points could save you potentially. I think if you're those three, you try to get as many points as possible and try to stay up front as much as you can and see if that's enough.
I know we still got 2 races here, but in this round. But Tyler Reddick below the cut line. How is that even possible? Because that sticks out to me the most, Tyler. The fact that this
The
man
regular season points champion.
I know, regular season points champion, won at Kansas last year. He won the Talladega race in May or in April, and sitting below the cut line, they were non-existent in Kansas. That 2311 team is usually the team to beat, and they just did not show up, relatively speaking. So I feel like you're right. You have to go up and try to make up for some of that lost time at Kansas Speedway. Try to get some of those stage points that you missed out on. Tyler Reddick did not score any stage points at Kansas Speedway, which is bizarre to me.
Yeah, that's arguably 2311's best track.
Yeah.
Then you go to the next 3. Suarez, Briscoe, and Cindric. You just got to go for the win. You just got to do whatever it takes to try to get a win. You're that far back. You're not out of it, obviously. But the best thing those 3 can do is just try to find a way to get to victory lane.
And of those 3, Tyler, I feel like Chase Briscoe, who has been in the situation before, outside looking in, underdog in the playoffs. They made it to the round of 8 and almost made it to the championship 4 in 2022 in this vehicle. So Chase Briscoe, if there's anybody who can do it, and we saw him do it last round, he was on the outside looking in, leaving Atlanta, involved in that Kyle Larson crash, collected a ton of stage points at Watkins Glen and a top 10 finish, which is rare to do on a road course. And the style run he had at Bristol propelled him to this round. I feel like if I'm Chase Briscoe, I'm feeling the most comfortable of any of those guys that are below the cut line.
I think all 3 of them are capable of winning here. We've seen Daniel Suarez win in Atlanta earlier this year. We've seen Austin Cindric win at Daytona. I wouldn't rule it out that any of those 3 could get it done, and certainly sets up for a fascinating race this weekend at Talladega. So now let's shift gears and talk about this Talladega race here. Talladega, it's an event in itself. Everybody knows all there is to know about Talladega when you talk about the boulevard and everything with it. But now you got playoff implications here. I think we're setting up for a fantastic race on Sunday, even without the playoff. Like the April race is always good, and now this race too. I would not be surprised at all, Dom, if this ends up being the best race of the entire season.
It could be. It has the potential for that. And we're going to have a full field, too. We'll get more onto that here in a minute with the entry list. But the fact that it's going to be all 40 cars, you know there's a shot to win if you're in the field at Talladega. I heard somebody say it years ago, and I thought it's a great analogy, Tyler, especially with this new car. You throw all the drivers' names or the car numbers into a hat and you pull a number out, and that's who your winner is, or it has the potential of being the winner because the racing is great. 3-wide action is awesome. We know there's that potential for a crash. Maybe that crash doesn't come. Maybe we have 3 overtimes. Maybe the race runs its scheduled distance. But no matter what happens this Sunday, and with all 3 series racing this weekend, you know it's going to be a good event.
Absolutely, for sure. And one of the things that has frustrated some fans in the past with what we've seen with the restrictor plate racing or the drafting tracks as of late is these cars running not 100 miles an hour to save gas and conserve fuel. I think you got too many teams, Dom, that are racing to save their seasons to be worried about fuel mileage here. I think you got too many cars that are going to be pushing the leaders up front that I would be surprised if that was an issue like we've seen in the past.
Absolutely. The stakes are a lot higher. This isn't a regular season race in April. This is a potential chance to get to the next round of the playoffs. And you know that ante is going to be upped this Sunday. There are 12 drivers. None of them are guaranteed to the next round. So it's not like years ago where we saw the Joe Gibbs racing cars hanging in the back because they had enough points. That's just not going to happen this time around, Tyler. And I feel like, yeah, you might have somebody like a William Byron or Christopher Bell or Ryan Blaney more likely and that's the key word, more likely, but not guaranteed to try and run a more conservative race because they're still trying to get enough points too where they could clinch. In a scenario too, Tyler, you have drivers like that. If you do leave the race about 59 points ahead of the cutoff, you could, in theory, clinch a spot to the next round in the round of 8 with a good Talladega run. So there's a lot at stake. There's so many races that are going to be going on. Those races within the race.
Yeah, there is certainly, and the guys that are not, in the playoff still have certainly a lot to race for, as we've seen in these previous playoff races here. I mean, you're looking at this race where it's an opportunity to win at Talladega, one of the marquee events of the NASCAR season. This is a huge chance, and for me, what do I wonder too? We mentioned about the fuel strategy being different than what we've seen in the past with the last couple drafting tracks. What about the teams too? Like we know that the manufacturers, put out something to the teams that say, hey, we want all of our cars working together and all this. But Dominic, I think that only goes for about 2.5 stages. Once we get to the end of this, especially with playoff implications, um, it's every man for themselves.
I would imagine so. I mean, you can work with a manufacturer teammate or that technical alliance driver as much as you can. But at the end of the day, you got to be selfish. You want to go out and win for your team, your sponsors, your everything else can be forgiven, I think. Winning fixes a lot of things. And if you're the winning manufacturer, of course, things are all right in the world. And there's going to be two manufacturers that lose on Sunday. So it comes down to even boiling it down more that you have 39 drivers that don't win and one that will. So what moves will be made? They'll be scrutinized. They'll be Monday morning quarterback, Monday morning crew chief, however you want to call it. But we look at Daytona, the Parker Retzloff, Kyle Busch, Harrison Burton deal. And Kyle Busch even said, you really can't fault the guy, Parker Clearman, or Parker Retzloff, that is, because he really isn't in a lot of those conversations with the manufacturer meeting. So I feel like you're right. How can you really depend on that for all 500 miles? Maybe the first 450 miles run with manufacturer alliance, but that's all out the window. These drivers are thinking big picture, and their big picture is that they need to get to the next round of the playoffs. They need to win for their team. They need to make their people proud. And the manufacturer alliances go out the window at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And this weekend, like I got to tell you, I cannot wait to see how this all unfolds because Talladega doesn't disappoint. You got a playoff race and everything here. I can't wait. We'll get to our picks coming up in just a bit. But let me ask you this before we move on, Dom, and get to our next segment here. Who would you say of all the playoff drivers, who has the most at stake, the most to lose this weekend? Who do you think this race matters to the most in that sense? I got a name, but I want to hear from you.
I'm curious if you agree or disagree with this. I think it would be three drivers in that tier one that you were talking about. Your 3 points leaders, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, and Christopher Bell. Those three have the biggest to lose because they have the biggest points cushion over anybody. They have the biggest margin over the cut line. They are the ones without a lap being turned on track, without knowing who's going to qualify where just yet, in my opinion, have the biggest to lose right now.
For me, I got a different answer on this. I think it's the guys with a little bit of chip on their shoulder, something to prove in the sense of like, hey, Tyler Reddick's the regular season champion, and he's got his back against the wall. Denny Hamlin, we've been over this time and time again about him in the postseason, not getting it done when it matters, and the clock's ticking on him to win his first championship. That's what I'm looking at. Slight different perspective from you, but I think for those guys that, haven't necessarily got it done in the playoffs, haven't won when it mattered, and here they are in this situation where it's tight. That's what my focus is on there.
And I think you have some good points there to tell too, because that time is running out for Denny Hamlin. How many more chances are you going to have in a competitive car like you have right now? We've even seen the fall off since May. I mean, it could just be maybe a JGR thing, maybe a little bit of a fall off on Hamlin's performance altogether, or a little bit of both. Hard to say, but certainly a lot of storylines to be watching for this Sunday. It certainly won't disappoint.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Dom, let's get to the news and notes. What's going on in the sport?
Well, let's continue there with the Talladega Trek this week at NASCAR, sending out an all points bulletin on Tuesday, October 1st. They want to make some aerodynamic changes to the Cup cars this weekend to make sure that they do not go off the ground. As we saw at Michigan, we saw at Daytona, cars are able to lift off. And in an effort to do that, NASCAR has instituted changes, as per NASCAR.com, that some of these additions that went out to the teams include extending the height of the roof rail and an extended rocker panel skirt and a fabric beneath the right side roof flap, all in an effort to be able to try and deflect more air. And it reduced the chances of a vehicle going airborne in the event that maybe there's an on-track spin or some sort of situation where a car would go sideways. Try to keep those cars on the ground, unlike what we saw with Corey LaJoie and with Josh Berry in Daytona.
That's probably a good idea. On NASCAR's part to try to keep it safer and just avoid some crazy stuff happening. And what you hope is that it doesn't affect the racing, and we ultimately won't know till we see it in real time.
Yeah, that's true. And one of those where you hate to say, well, NASCAR is being reactive. Well, yeah, they have to be reactive in a situation like this. And they're being proactive at the same time, too, because we don't want to see cars. We don't want to see anyone get injured. We don't want to see people getting hurt behind the wheel of these race cars. We want to try to keep it as safe as possible. Granted, I know it'd be ignorant to say you're going to eliminate all danger from racing because that's just not going to happen. But you can try to eliminate as many of those factors and variables as possible. And I got to commend NASCAR for being proactive on a situation like this. Yes, it's a mid-season change rule, but sometimes we need those.
Well, and we've seen this new car when it initially came out was not as safe as the previous car, and NASCAR acted accordingly. They've made some very good changes. When it comes to safety, since that's happened, I mean, how many drivers did we have get hit with concussions, or we saw Kurt Busch's career come to an end earlier than it should have, with a rough accident he had. So, with all that said, I will never fault NASCAR on being proactive when it comes to safety and trying to take care of business there.
Absolutely. This is one of those safety measures. I think that, hey, we need to see if it works, and what better to put this and implement it into a race where we can reduce that possibility of a car going airborne and catching unnecessary air.
Absolutely. What else we got?
So also looking at some of the headlines for this weekend, and of course our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers go out to everybody that has been affected by Hurricane Helene and everything that we've been seeing, all those pictures flooding in North Carolina and all across the country. And Tyler, with that being said too, you always hear about NASCAR being a community sport and like a family. And we have really seen that step up over the last few days, those pictures and stories coming out over the last several days, including a friend of the show, Greg Biffle, who has been flying his helicopter, trying to take supplies and even getting donations from Elon Musk's company with SpaceX to be able to provide different materials and supplies and keep people on the grid and have communication. And not just Biffle, but Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, to name a few, Junior Motorsports, 2311. I believe Michael Jordan had said they had made $1 million donation, and they're going to be taking more donations from the community as well to help everybody that has been affected by this natural phenomenon. So really cool, Tyler, to see that in the time of need, in these very unfortunate circumstances, we see the best of humanity come out. And of course, the NASCAR community is no exception to that.
Absolutely. NASCAR community, it's a family, and just obviously awful what happened with this hurricane and the lives that were affected. I was supposed to go to Tampa this past week and enjoy things out there, but with the hurricane, I couldn't make it. And I'm just glad for people that are safe and hope that they come through this. But great to see the NASCAR base just kind of rallying around and showing their support here.
Sure, absolutely, and I'm sure we're going to continue to see some more great stories come out of it. And again, you see the worst happen, but you also hear the best of people coming out in the times of need. So I'm sure we're going to hear more, and we're set to have Biffle back later on this year. So I'm sure we're going to get to hear more from that one-on-one perspective. And he'll never say he's a hero. These people that do this don't do it for the attention. They don't claim to be heroes, but they are heroes, Tyler. They inspire us to all push to do better.
No question about it.
Yes. And moving on to some of the NASCAR news and notes, and maybe you've seen them at the racetrack too, Tyler, or maybe not But the Netflix crews have been in full force trying to get this full speed season 2 in wraps. And we know it was kind of tied up with the charter deal, but NASCAR did announce on Monday, September 30th, that full speed will be back for a season 2 and it will premiere on Netflix in 2025. So this was the series that followed various drivers between their public and personal lives as they ran and made their NASCAR run through the playoffs in 2023. And I can tell you too, Tyler, being in Atlanta, that opening race of the playoffs, you saw a lot of crews working with different drivers and teams, talking to Suarez, talking to Bowman. Joey Logano had won the race. They had extra crews. You could tell there was more cameras and more crews hands on deck with this. So really cool, really excited to see some good news come out of this with more documentary stuff coming out.
Yeah, this is a great thing for the sport. You know, we all know about the Drive to Survive series, how successful that's been. And then with what this series did, I haven't seen it myself, but you had a lot of non-NASCAR fans checking it out and getting their first glimpse into the sport for the first time, and bringing in new fans to NASCAR. I think was a great thing, and showed a perspective with these drivers and their families that we had not seen before. I think makes these drivers more popular in a sense, because you get them out of the race car, you get them out of the fire suit, and see them as everyday people. One of the things that F1 has done so well, whether it was with the Drive to Survive series or how they've marketed their drivers, like they go to their drivers and they say jump, and the answer from F1 drivers is out how high. We'll do all the skilly, we'll do all the silly stuff, whatever it takes, and then you know they've had a great response from it. And I think NASCAR, since losing this generation of these notable household names of the Jeff Gordons, the Dale Juniors, the Tony Stewarts, the Jimmy Johnsons of the world, there's been a gap where we haven't seen NASCAR have those household names outside of the sport. Everybody within NASCAR knows Chase Elliott, but if Chase Elliott walked the streets of Manhattan, he probably wouldn't even get stopped. And so I think when you do stuff, it helps grow that brand and helps put these drivers out there. I think it's a very good thing.
Absolutely. It can only help the exposure of the sport. I remember Dale Earnhardt Jr. saying years ago, like he knew NASCAR was just on the up and the up in the mid 2000s. They were at Fontana. I think he had said it was on a Dale Jr. download. And I'm sure you, the listener, probably would know the story better than I do. So please let us know below. But I'm pretty sure the story went, Tyler, that Junior and his team, they were on the grid there pre-race for a race at Fontana. And he just looked around and there's movie executives, there's movies on race cars that were going to be coming out later that year. So he's like, wow, we've really made it big as a sport when you have Hollywood and we're in Hollywood's backyard and there's movies on vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah. Great story there, and a great sign of things. And hopefully this works out and is another success again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Tyler, going into this weekend, we know we take a look at the odds and the Yellowwood 500 at Talladega is really not going to disappoint. If you were a gambling man, which I know you are,
Which I am, yes.
who would you be thinking if you're an odds maker? Let's rephrase that. Who do you think you'd be putting as the odds-on favorite or favorites, and what would their odds be?
Oh, all right. Well, it being Talladega, your odds are going to be much lower just because it's such a crapshoot. I would think Denny Hamlin probably is the favorite, probably around 800 or 900. I'd probably put William Byron up there, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney. That'd probably be my top four.
Okay, you got one out of the four because there's four co-favorites this weekend per
Okay.
the Caesar Sportsbook. Before any lap has been turned, the time of the taping of this show midweek, you have four odds-on favorites: Ryan Blaney, who you mentioned, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, and Kyle Busch, all coming in at 12 to 1 or plus 1,200 as your odds-on
Okay.
favorites. Then it
That's a
goes
nice
William
payout.
Byron. Yeah, not bad, not bad. And you tend to see that with Daytona and Talladega. Your odds-on favorites not going to be lower than plus 900 or 9 to 1. So about on par with what we have seen the last couple of years. Then you go William Byron, who's sitting at 14 to 1 or plus 1,400. Never won on a super speedway, but has come very, very close. Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, who have both won at Talladega before, sitting at plus 1,600 or 16 to 1. Chris Buescher coming in at 1,800 along with Kyle Larson, who's never won at one of these speedway tracks. Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Austin Cindric, Bubba Wallace, all at 20 to 1. Tyler Reddick, who won the race in May, sitting at 22 to 1 or plus 2,200, along with Michael McDowell. And Martin Truex Jr., who's never won on this style of track either, go with Ty Gibbs, or co 2,500 odds, I should say, with Ty Gibbs at 25 to 1. And if you're building long shots, Tyler, some guys that would be at the bottom of that list, or maybe some juicy odds, would include BJ McLeod, who has finished top 10 in super speeder races in the past, coming in at 200 to 1, JJ Haley at 150 to 1, Cody Ware, Daniel Hemrick, each at 100 to 1.
He's a desperate man. I am feeling Tyler Reddick this week. I think that he sweeps. He's done really well at this track. 2311's done well at this track in the past. That's the guy I'm looking at. That's the bet I might have to make, as I'll be in a legal betting state in Arizona this weekend. I might have to put it on Tyler Reddick. How about you?
Oh man, checkers or wreckers, I feel like with Tyler Reddick. You know it's going to be feast or famine this weekend. It's going to be a win or a junked race car back to that airspeed shop. But to add to that, I think Tyler going with, man, there's going to be a lot of people racing conservatively. There's going to be a lot of people shaking it up at the front of the field. I feel like Team Penske really has their super speedway and their drafting tracks dialed in. I feel like you're going to see your winner come out of there. Maybe I'm being boring. Maybe I'm being a realist. I think the defending winner of this race, Ryan Blaney, gets it done on Sunday.
Yeah, I can see that too. We'll see what happens. Before we go, our mailbag segment this week. Submit questions to us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com, Star Podcasts on X, and also on Facebook as well. And our first question this week comes from Clarence. Clarence wants to know, guys, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, Clarence, good question, man. For me, never go wrong with strawberry. And
Oh, you're
soft serve
basic.
ice cream is good. Soft serve is really, really good. I got to try
You are
strawberry.
basic.
Strawberries? Okay, if we're going sophisticated, then I'll go cotton candy.
Okay. I'm a chocolate chip cookie dough guy. I love chocolate chip cookie dough from Bluebell, and from Brahms, I love me some chocolate almond ice cream.
Okay. All
I
right.
know David's a big ice cream guy too. Like he eats ice cream from Kroger about every night.
That might be his dinner some nights too, right?
Yes. Along with frozen pizza. Yes.
Yes, David getting all the staples there. Absolutely. No, yeah, ice cream's a good call. I like to chop some up with some bananas, have a good milkshake once in a while. I'm a dairy guy for sure, Tyler. I don't know about you, but whether it be
I
cheese,
love dairy.
milkshake, yeah, I've
I
kind of
love
cut back
dairy,
on
but
it a lot of it, but it's good.
I just don't like white milk.
I like adding white milk to coffee. Like I gotta have some whole milk with my coffee in the morning. Make it a hot
Oh,
milkshake.
I can't drink white milk by itself.
Okay. Well, was it one of those situations? Because I certainly had this as a kid where you were forced to drink milk because it was good for you, the calcium, the good for the bone density. Because I had that kind of shoved down my throat as a kid. I
Yes,
didn't drink milk for a few years because of that.
it was shoved down my throat, but what hasn't changed over the years is it makes me gag.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that being an issue then. You definitely want to stay away from that.
Yes. So no, I do not enjoy white milk. I stay away from it, but I still enjoy all dairy products. We're very pro dairy podcast here.
Yes, for sure.
Let's go. Uh, Next question in the inbox this week comes from Anna, and Anna wants to know if there was one NASCAR race that you haven't been to that you'd like to go to, what is on your list? Dominic, we'll start with you.
My short list, Martinsville Speedway. I would love to go to Martinsville. That's one of the very few tracks I've never been to. And I've had an opportunity to go. It didn't work out. And there's been some chances to go over the years, and just again, it hasn't worked out with the schedule. But Martinsville Speedway, especially that October race or the November race, right before you go to the playoffs, I think would be a cool track. The only track that is on the original schedule from 1949 that's still run today. The history there. It'd be awesome to go to Martinsville. How about you, Tyler?
So this weekend, while I'm out in Phoenix, I'm actually getting a tour of Phoenix Raceway. I haven't gotten the privilege to go see a race there. No on-track action happening this weekend, but I'm excited to see the track for itself. Phoenix is definitely on my list. I've already been to Daytona and Talladega. Um, I love going to the Nashville race every year. Been to Chicago. I feel like I've been to a lot of them, but one that I want to cross off as well. I need to get out to Sonoma. I want to experience wine country and see that road course and everything that it's about. That's on my list. I want to spend a weekend in Sonoma. Maybe I need to wait till I have a better half or something and make it a little romantic getaway or something of sorts. But Sonoma would be on my list. You've been out to Sonoma, right?
I've been twice and I've road tripped it. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I can tolerate a 10 to 12 hour road trip, but 16 hours, you got to break that up
Oh,
in 2 days from Grants, New Mexico. So both times I went, the cruise I went with, we made sure to break it up and we made it a little bit of a vacation. But yeah, going out there with a significant other would be really cool to do. So maybe Felice, who happens to work with the website as a photographer, she can be on the crew that weekend and we can get that all figured out and
so
go.
Felice, if you're listening, there's an open invite. Dominic saying, let's go to Sonoma.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll go work and then experience wine country. And I got to tell you too, I don't know if the pandemic changes, but the two times I went in 16 and in 19, they brought in the best wines from the vineyards around the Sonoma County, and they had hors d'oeuvres and like antipasti bar, that all the cool stuff. They'd bring it out, and you'd have a Victory Lane wine tasting experience. The media members got to do this, and they had one year, I think it was Ernie Irvin and Tony Stewart. Can't remember who went the other year, but really cool stuff that they really wanted the media to be involved with. And then if you get out there a few days earlier, they'd have this luncheon at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, and they bring out the Daytona 500 winner. They would bring out like an up and coming driver because Toyota works with the Speedway. So maybe it was more Toyota working with the track, but we had Denny Hamlin both times, with Brittany Zamora another time. Ernie Irvin was there. So really cool things. Like if you are able to go out there for the week or for a few days, it really is worth the experience. Plus, you have San Francisco there. There's a lot to do in the area. Sacramento's not too far away. It's a really cool part of the country.
Love it. That's great. Before we go, what's going on with you this weekend?
This weekend, I'll be at home. We'll have actually we're not going to have anybody at the racetrack for our team this weekend, but that will probably be the last week.
Slackers.
I know the Slackers. See how we are. Yeah, I'd send you to the track for us, but you're going to be busy covering football, I'm sure.
I will be covering football this weekend. I got on Sunday taking on the Giants, and then we got a little Monday night football action with the Chiefs and the Saints. But I'm heading out to Phoenix on Thursday. Going to go watch my Kansas Jayhawks play a little football against Arizona State. They're not playing so good right now, so hopefully I can turn things around. Ironically enough, though, I've been bad luck because a lot of the games I've been to, I've seen Kansas lose. So maybe I'm not the luck they need, actually. But so looking forward to that. Join Phoenix and checking out Phoenix Raceway the first time and seeing what that's all about. Should be a great time. So certainly looking forward to that. Should be a great weekend. We'll put the checkered flag out in this edition of Let's Go Racing. As always, subscribe to show new episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening to podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit the like button. We certainly would appreciate it. And follow us on social media on X at Star Podcasts, also on Facebook. And you can email us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. And check out this show as well as the rest of the shows in the Studio Soapbox Network. The Jones Report, the Coach Bo Knows podcast, available on all podcast platforms. For David Starr, Dominic Aragata, I am Tyler Jones saying so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.